Today is the last session of the Satipatthana series. The last session has been used to sort of answer and to sort of revisit some of the topics that we have been discussing over the past 4 weeks. But in our last session, with Dr. Kamal not being able to complete the complete elucidation of what he was to discuss, I have requested Dr. Kamal to complete the rest of the elucidation of the Dhammanupassana that was he intended to do, because a lot of our participants who participated in that day's program had requested that the topic be completed because the talk was very good, very well presented. So, Dr. Kamal, if you would please. Thank you very much.
Bante, for some reason I could not hear you. Would you mind to just repeat what you said?
Yes. So,
Related to me?
if you would elucidate the part of the topic that you could not elucidate last time.
All
So,
right.
because
Very
it
much.
was
Yeah.
requested by a lot of our members.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Also, up until Dr. Kamal is getting ready with the presentation, I would like to let everyone know that we are focusing a lot on question and answers today. So if you do have any questions to be answered, that you would like some answers to, that you would like to discuss, please do pop it down on the chat section, or let me know if you would like to ask the question yourself, and we will unmute you and make it possible for you to ask a question, or you can put the question on the chat section. Thank you. Dr. Kamal?
Bante, can you see the
Yes.
PowerPoint now? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. With great respect to Bante Panyavansa, so I'm going to start as requested by just going through some of the stuff on which people had questions. So we had a question, if we could just more clarify. We talk about the baby's picture and how it's applied to 5 aggregates. So I believe the people who asked the question are available right now on board. So what I was saying, now just say, so first of all, why we have to do meditation, or I mean, what Buddha wanted us to accomplish. So it means to get rid of mental and physical stress. So then we need to know why this mental stress happen. So what is the cause? So that's why Buddha said, we are not trying to get rid of suffering, but we try to get rid of cause of suffering. So the cause is 5 aggregates, nothing else. Because if we realize what 5 aggregates do, then we know the cause of suffering, and then we can get rid of suffering. But if you try to think that I can get rid of suffering, that's impossible if we don't know why. Example, just say there has been a fire in your house. So when you call the fire brigade, so first thing they need to see, not the fire. Of course, they're going to extinguish the fire, but they want to know what's the cause of the fire. So therefore, if you don't know the cause of the fire, so you can't prevent it further happening. So that's why in Dhammanupassana meditation we said, so we are seeing what arises, what disappears, and if it arises again in the future, how to be abundant. So if you want to know how to be abundant, you need to know why it arises, why it arose. If you don't know why it arose, we can't prevent it anymore. So that's why I put this picture. Just say, so what is 5 aggregates? That was the question we had on. Because I was not planning to use the PowerPoint today, otherwise I would have been more organized, but I can pull it up. Now this is the five aggregates. Just say we are five aggregates because Buddha said in his first sermon, Dhammacakkappavattana Sutra, Bhikkhu Mahanini. Yeah. So there are 11 types of suffering, but in short, five aggregates is suffering. So therefore, we don't have to think about other suffering. If we really understand five aggregates. Okay, let's say now. So this is in five forms. So it means material form, feeling, perception, mental formation, and consciousness. So let's see what are they. Now just say, uh, because if you don't know what are they, that's why we said we need to have a sort of knowledge in order to contemplate. So five aggregates and how to contemplate on. We need to know what's the material or physical form. We need to know what feeling is. We need to know what perception is. We need to know what mental formation is. We need to know what consciousness is. Okay, let's move on to the baby. Just say, I see this picture as a baby. Someone else may see this picture as a cute baby. Someone may see this picture as an ugly baby. Someone may see this picture as neutral baby. So it means once you see the baby, so not the baby himself, you have a picture in your mind. Mind create a picture you have. If you close your eyes now, you can still see that picture in your mind unless you are arahat. Yeah, so you already have that picture in your mind. So then, not to the baby, not to this picture, but to the mental picture, which is Dharma, you have in your mind. You create pleasurable, unpleasurable, or neutral feeling. So it means it's is subjective because if the feeling coming from the baby, everyone should have the same feeling. The nurse who killed baby should have the same feeling. We just hold the baby up, we should also have the same feeling, or otherwise someone indifferent, I don't care, just a baby, same feeling, but it won't happen. So it means it's subjective feeling. Okay, just say I like this baby, so therefore I had a pleasurable feeling. So now I am going to create perception, but please try to understand. It's very difficult to translate Pali into English. We're not talking about feeling in English feeling, because in English feeling and sensation is totally different. But Buddha talked about something else here, Vedana. Vedana means vindane. So how you going to take it? Yeah, it's not like, I mean, it's difficult to explain because first Buddha said, because Buddha talked in Magadhi language, but Buddha's teaching was written in Pali language. So Buddha advised to two twins, it's a big story, do not translate my teaching to any other language. Don't write it, but you go and explain it in your own language. But when you start writing the language, Magadhi to Pali, Pali to Sinhala, especially Pali to English, there are many examples that in some English books there are many errors. So therefore you need to try to understand in Buddha's terms, Buddha's wording. So therefore we now talking about perception, but that's not the real perception word in English. So perception means what? Like I said on the other day, you're going to put adjectives onto this baby. You're going to define. So I would say cute baby, nice baby. So then you're going to put adjectives. You're going to describe This we call Rupa, Vedana, Sanya. So you're going to have Sanya. So it means when you have this perception, Sanya, it causes mental or volitional action in your mind. So number one, okay, there are three types of volitional actions. It means mental one. I mean, I can put it into two groups. In one group, three. In the other group, three. Let's talk about the first group first. So one is uh, you have mental formation. Okay, I like this baby. So it means you're liking in your mind. So it means volitionally, you just making, thoughts about the baby. And then you like to talk to the baby. If baby was there, we would say, nice baby, please come to my hand. I like you. Oh, such a lovely baby. Then you causing verbal, yeah, formations in your mind verbally, or we call Kaya Sankar, Vachi Sankar. So first one, Mano Sankar, you had. Second one, you had Vachi Sankar. Then you like to hold the baby up. You want to grab Baba Vadagan. So I want to grab the baby. Then you're going to have Kaya Sankar. So these three sankaras, or one, or two, or whatever, then you're going to have consciousness, ego consciousness. You're going to put you in that consciousness. This is me. This is mine. I like me, mine, I-ness. I-ness, me-ness, mine-ness. Then you're going to have consciousness, which means vinyan. But again, you should not confused. So whenever you see the baby first, also you had eye consciousness. That is a different vinyan. Vinyan is the same, but we give different name. Example, we call, you call me, okay, I call my wife called me, okay, husband, yeah, and then my son called me dad, my daughter called me dad, my patient called me doctor, my student called me lecturer, or someone called me meditator. See the same Kamal, different names. So likewise, the vinyan consciousness, it means in presence of consciousness object and your I, you create attachment or contact. That's what Buddha says, passa pachya vedana. So because of the three things, the baby, your I, and the I consciousness, you had passa or contact. Then passa made vedana. Vedana means feeling. So that's about Paticca Samuppada, dependent origination. This is not no time to go through the dependent origination now, but Vedana made Phassa, Phassa made Vedana, sorry, then Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. So see now what's going to happen now? You bring this baby to your home now. So baby already gone. You met in the street, but still you thinking about baby or beautiful girl or handsome man or otherwise nice Mercedes Benz car. So then our cortisol level is going up because we're not living in the present moment. When you're not living in the present moment, then this we call becoming. Becoming means bhava. That's why Buddha said bhava, but we think bhava is always having a rebirth. But that's not the case. That is also bhava. However, it causes becoming. So then bhava pachya jati. Jati pachya jara marana. It means what? Jara marana means it arising and ceasing, not necessarily you becoming old and you die. That is related to the physical body. But Buddha really means jati, jara, marana means whatever arises, that is born, it grows up, then it's dying. And again it comes up. That's what Buddha said. We need to contemplate. I mean, not as a as I mean, philosophical way. You need to contemplate within you. When you meditate, you need to see how it arises, how this form arises. So in this example, the form is the baby's picture you had in your mind, like photocopy, like a scanning copy, or like whatever the picture you built up in your mind. So that's the form. Then you create the feeling, then you had perception, then you had mental formation, volitional action, which can cause karma. In case I die this time now, while I'm just looking at this baby, depending on which formation I had in my mind, my vijnana, my consciousness decide where I am going to take Kamal now, to which realm. There are 31 realms. So Kamal's consciousness decide, okay, where should I take Kamal once he died? So if I had Punya Abhisankara, yeah, so it means the skillful one, yeah, wholesome one, I may be going to a upper realm. So if I had the bad one, punya bisankar, unwholesome one, I may be taken to the hell. But if I did not have any at all, like bahya, but I'm not talking about upeksha. Yeah, upeksha also is a moha. Yeah, so it's delusion, but I didn't have any consciousness. I may become uh, Nibbana. I may go into Nibbana. So that's the five aggregates, ladies and gentlemen, with great respect to Bhante Panyavansa, which I was trying to explain last time. Now, do you have any questions, please, on this explanation? Or you want to put that in the chat box later? Yeah. Okay, now see, now again ill will. So we said, uh, so what are the five hindrances? Number one, sensory desire, which we were talking about right now. But again, the nurse, I always remind that is very important. Always the nurse who killed babies had ill will towards the babies, yeah, not sensory pleasure. So then ill will also we take the same way. And then dullness. If you had dullness, you take the same way. If you had restlessness, you take that the same way. So then, uh, what we can do, what we can do. If I go to the PowerPoint, sorry. Uh, but what I'm going to show is not easy task to do, but you need to develop that through your continuous meditation. Yeah, so what Buddha said to Bahya, you know the Bahya Sutta, Buddha said, Ditte Dittamantam Bhavisati, Sute Sutamantam Bhavisati, Mute Mutamantam Bhavisati, Vinyane Vinyatamatam Bhavisati. So I seen the baby. So what I need to do? Once I seen, in the scene will be merely what is seen through meditation. I know you're doing most of your meditation with our Bhante. You have a very good opportunity twice a week. So if you can improve, if you can purify your mind, if you can develop your mind, then you come to a certain stage, not through samatha, not through tranquility meditation, through vipassana, insight meditation, you come to a stage whenever you see the baby, in the scene will be merely what is seen. If you heard the nice music, nice noise, you're not going to have greed or aversion towards that noise. In the heard will be merely what is heard, and in the sense will be merely what is sensed, and in the cognized will be merely what is cognized. This is what we are aiming at, ladies and gentlemen, through meditation. Nothing else. This is the only way you can purify your mind. You can get rid of mental and physical suffering. So, therefore, we are aiming at first, we start with anchoring our mind using samatha meditation, either breath or whatever. But I normally recommend Buddha's meditation, that's the breath, where Buddha became enlightened through an anapanasati. So if Buddha became enlightened through anapanasati, what else we need? So if someone could enlighten, then, then it's been all covered through this meditation. And then step by step, you're going to opening your mind, opening your heart, and you go to Vipassana meditation. Finally, you will come to a certain stage. Whenever you see something, don't ignore. But if you're doing ignoring that, that's not Buddhist teaching. You need to just understand the decaying features of this object, not just the beauty of the object. That's why we do 6 types of kaya anupassana meditation. Okay, then Bante asked me to cover what we could not do last time. Uh, Unfortunately, I have to move to the other PowerPoint. Yeah. Okay, so then we answered the question most of you had. So then what we need to do, we need to use Yoniso Manasikara. It means eightfold, noble eightfold pathway, Sammaditthi, right view. Number 2, right intention. When you look at an object which you heard a noise or sound, you need to use Sammaditthi, right view and right intention. Then you are reaching, you're going to the Yoniso Manasikara. And then we could not cover uh, 4 noble truths. Yeah. 4 noble truths. So if we go back to our session, last session, the first couple of slides, what we wanted to contemplate on 5 hindrances, which we covered, 5 aggregates, which we covered, 6 sense base I covered using white cow and black cow connected to the strong rope pulling each other. Yeah. So we talked about the fetters, and then 4 noble truths and 7 factors of enlightenment left. Yeah. Okay, now if we move on to 7 factors of enlightenment. Okay, number 1, mindfulness. Yeah. Number 2, keen investigation of Dharma. Any Dharma, you become mindful now. Then you aware, you are mindful, but don't try to enjoy that and attach to that. Oh, I'm mindful, I'm happy. I know you're going to get joy and happiness. That's different. But don't try to just attach that or push it away. So you aware, you know, you become mindful now. Again, please remember the word English mindfulness is not exactly what the Buddha's mindfulness. They haven't found any word in the English vocabulary other than mindfulness. It's a bit confusing. So unless someone describe that, we may get misunderstanding. And then keen investigation of Dharma. So then whatever the Dharma you've been mindful on, you investigate like a scientist in your mind. So in this occasion, only you analyzing. Remember when we did Kaya Anupassana, Vedana Anupassana, Chitta Anupassana, we did not analyze anything. We just seen them as they were. But when you come to this stage, but you need to do meditation properly a lot in order to see these seven factors. Ideally, seven factors, not what you aiming at. It will come automatically to you. If you've done proper meditation, then you're going to have you're going to be full energetic. It's against the opposite of the dullness. So you become very energetic. Then you reaching a state called rapture and happiness. Yeah? Some of the some of the elements of dhyana or blissful state. Then your mind become tranquilized. Then you be aware, it's tranquil. Then you're going to a state called samadhi. If you know the eight noble path, but Samma Ditti Sankappa like that in his quote, it comes Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. Then you came to Samma Samadhi stage and then uh, equanimity. Yeah, fine. So whenever they arise, so what you need to do, the mindfulness is present. The mindfulness factor is not in me if it's not there. Then you know how the non-arising mindfulness arises. It means it's like a boat trying to collide with something. So if you think the boat is going to have a collision, so you need to put the anchor down. Because you pull the anchor up, then boat started to move away to the reef. Then you need to pull the anchor down again and get your mindfulness. So therefore, mindfulness you may lose it. Yeah. So you know how the non-arising mindfulness arises. You know the perfection in the development of the arising of mindfulness comes to be in the future. Then the last, which we could not cover, the Four Noble Truths. We could talk 5-6 years on this topic, not 1 hour, because this is the Buddha's whole teaching. Buddha said, Chaturarya Satya, or the Four Noble Truths, is the key, or otherwise nutshell in Buddhist teaching. Truth of suffering, the truth of the origin of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering. Okay, then let's see what's the truth of suffering. So Buddha talked about, rather than suffering, the truth of suffering. So truth of suffering means dukkha satya. So there are three kinds. So number one, suffering of suffering. I'll explain them step by step if we get time. And then the second one, suffering on change, when there is a change, when we cannot accept, that is the other suffering. The third one is all pervasive suffering. So that's about Panchupadana skandha, the suffering because of vijnana, because of sankhara suffering, yeah, suffering due to mental formation. So that's the most important thing. Now, before Buddha was born, everyone knew, because even Buddha was born, everyone knew there is a suffering of suffering. Any 5-6 year old child may understand. Whenever you die, whenever you are born, whenever you decaying, whenever you becoming old, people are not happy. They're suffering. Or any physical object or human body decaying. Yeah. So if you have, I know even recently there was a small girl, 7 years old in Sri Lanka, who came to Satipatthana, and like those days there were Prince Rahul, and then people who were 7 years old even understood. So therefore, truth of suffering, the first one, you know that everything what is born, what is built up by someone, so it's decaying, destroying. That's number one. Number two, truth of suffering due to unacceptance on change. Just say, so you're going to watch nice movie. So just say 2 hours movie, you enjoying very much. Otherwise, I normally call it, uh, I forgot the name, I'm the one who forgot the name, uh, teledrama stopping syndrome. I really forgot what the name I put now. Just say you're watching a teledrama. So whenever teledrama finish, you don't want to stand up from the lounge because you very upset now. Teledrama is finished because it's been not recorded the next episode yet. So you can't wait 1 week to see this episode, next one. So that's we call suffering on unacceptance of change. You're not ready to accept the whatever the good condition is changing to bad condition. You're not ready to accept that. So that's the second one. But that also known by people before Buddha's time. But no one knew the suffering or all pervasive suffering or suffering due to sankhara, mental formation is the only discovered by Lord Buddha, either Gautama Buddha or any other 27 Buddhas or even more than that. Yeah, so they are the one who discovered this sankhara dukkha, which I already explained you. I think you understand. Explain sankara can be verbal, can be bodily sankara, or can be mental sankara formation. It can be punyabhi sankara. If you do meritorious action, like we doing now, and then if you do very bad action, meritorious one, then you get a punyabhi sankara. Then if you're going to develop your dhyanas, if you're going to do blissful state, you may get anijja sankara. But if you have no sankaras at all, it means you're going to have no rebirth. Yeah. So then you're not going to come to another rebirth. You finish your death and life cycle. So that's the truth of suffering. So we discussed three types of truth of suffering. So when we contemplate, when we do meditation, we need to contemplate on the truth of suffering on three kinds. Yeah. The truth of the origin of suffering is the dukkha samudaya. Like I started my session today, we need to see not the suffering itself, the cause of suffering. Why fire goes in my kitchen? So it means we think sometimes when you go to work tomorrow, your boss will shout at you. So then you think boss is the one cause you stress on. Otherwise, husband is the one cause you stress on, or wife, or children, or bus driver, or Boris, or COVID. But that's not the case because we have our perception. Yeah, so that's the perception is the one causing us stress. Okay, then everyone should be stressed who is dealing with these people we're talking about. So therefore, need to find the origin of suffering, dukkha samudaya. That is the wrong view, wrong intention. That's why Buddha said, dukkhe jnanam, dukkha samudaya jnanam. You need to have a jnana, wisdom about dukkha, suffering, and about the cause of dukkha, the samudaya, and then truth of cessation of suffering. Okay. Then if you did not have pleasurable feeling, if you did not put adjectives and adverbs, like I said the other day, then you cease in the the cause of suffering, which is Nirodha Satya, Dukkha Jnana, Dukkha Samudaya Jnana, Dukkha Nirodha Jnana. The last one, Dukkha Gamini Patipadaya. Yeah, it means the truth of path to the cessation of suffering, which is eight noble paths. Means starting from Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, yeah, so right view, right intention, right speech, the eight. So we need to go through that. So then only you can realize the truth. Because if you don't know what the path to the cessation of suffering is, we can't practice meditation. Because we need to practice meditation. There in that the seventh factor is right mindfulness. So don't please remember not mindfulness, right mindfulness. I mean, I can be mindful. I can maybe doing fishing. So when I am doing fishing, I am very mindful. I know which fish I need to catch. Yeah. So if I am killing someone, I am mindful. I know where to attack. So, but that's not right mindfulness because you have mindfulness on good stuff. So, therefore, we need to remember you need to be mindful, right mindful. It means what? Buddha said, Atapi sampajano satima. So, what's Atapi means? Effort. Effort to do what? Is that effort to do meditation? No. If you're going to make a big effort to do meditation, you end up with more stress. So effort to do what? To develop skillful qualities in the mind and abandon unskillful qualities in your mind. That's the effort. Therefore, atapi, sampajano, it means you need to be more alert and knowledgeable about what you're doing. Alertness, sata sampajano satima. So it means you aware all the time you're using your sati, the, the right or wrong, the word mindfulness. Yeah? So we're using that sati throughout your practice. So that's why Buddha said, Ata pi sampajano satima vinaya loke abhinya domanasam. It means when you do meditation, it should focus on to remove abhinya. It means debi lobha, sensory desire. Once you've done the meditation, you should have eliminated at least up to a certain extent Abhinya means sensory desire, and then you should have eliminated to a certain extent domanas. It means vyapad, it means the aversion, anger. So Buddha said we need to use the middle path. So what's the middle path? There is a section in Tripitaka called the section in pairs. So it means you don't go to the Kama Sukalikan Yoga, no sensory desire. Vyapad, you're not going to the other side. You need to be in the middle path. Yeah? So middle path between the desire and aversion. So that's what we need to try to achieve through meditation. Therefore, Buddha said, Ekayano ayam bhikkave maggo, sattanang visuddhya, purification of people's mind, and dukkha domanassanam samatikkamaya. So mental and physical suffering, nyayasa adhigamaya. If you want to go to any stage of sotapanna, sakudagami, arahat, otherwise in English we call non stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, or arahat. And then finally, Nibbana Satchikriya. It means if you want to attain Nibbana, what is the Ekayano Maggo? What is the only way? Contemplate on four frames of mindfulness, Kaya, Vedana, Sanya, Sankar, body, feeling, and then Chitta or consciousness and mind, and Dharma. So this is the only way, but it has to be aiming at Abhinyado manasam vinaya loke. Vinaya loke means not this world, in our world of six sensor doors. If you do meditation contemplating on to eliminate abhinyado manasam, sensory desire and aversion, that is the right meditation you are contemplating on. So it means when you contemplate, you know this is suffering, you know this is the origin of suffering, you know this is the cessation of suffering, you know this is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. But please remember, this is not just you know. This is not a PhD program, MSc program, or scholarship program, or any master's education. You need to see that within you. You not just know. You need to see that within you. That's the meaning of contemplating. It means insight. You know within you, vidarsana jnane. So you need to have vamaname panya, or the vidarsana panya, meditative wisdom. I think I took a long time, so therefore I would pass to Bante Panyavansa for the next step. If you have any
Yes.
questions.
So we do have some questions. So Dr. Kamal, if you have you finished then explaining
Yeah,
what
I mean, whatever you asked me to cover from the last session, Bante, I think to some extent I covered, because I
all,
can't take the
all
whole 2 hours to discuss my stuff. So
wonderful. So we do have some questions that has been asked by some of the people attending. So if anyone else does have any questions, you are most welcome to put forward these questions on the chat section, and we will try to answer them and draw some light to them to the best of our ability. So Dil A, I am not sure who Dil A, of course. Dil A has asked us a question. Sankhara, if nothing at Sankhara, regarding Sankhara, I suppose. Dil, would you like to ask the question yourself?
Can you hear me, Bante?
Yes, we can.
Right. So, no, I don't know whether I didn't hear it properly, but today, when Dr. Kamal was explaining, and when he went to Sankara, he said you get the Punyadi Sankara, where when you die, you go to a good place, depending on how we see this baby or whatever. And then he said Apunyakara, where you will go to an unwholesome place. And then he said the third is nothing at all, and it does not mean equanimity, but it's nothing at all, like where Bahia went. So that's not equanimity. It means that there's no feeling whatsoever. Equanimity being a feeling. Is that what he meant, Bante?
equanimity means already delusion. I mean,
that's what you were saying. So if you have equanimity, you go to a bad place, is it?
And Bahi was not closing his eyes, because Buddha said, you know the story, yeah? Because when
Yes,
Buddha
I
was
know.
going for alms, he approached him, and
Yes.
Buddha said, this is not right time.
Yes.
Finally, Buddha, Buddha, in fact, first 2 times he refused, I mean, good way. But then he said, I may die within a minute, you may die within a minute. So please tell me whatever you can tell me now. You know, the Bahi been long time from Kashyapa Buddha, in meditating. It's not just he started meditate as a lost shipment. You know, he was a lost shipment. Yeah. So then, as he had so experience in past life, so he could straight away use his vidarsana jnana. Yeah. So bhavana me panya. But he was not in upeksha. It's not equanimity state. Just see why what I see is I should not take as, to make feelings and perceptions and mental formation which, which lead into the consciousness. So therefore, if you just see, that's what I said, if you indifferently see, remember my example was, you just say, okay, I don't care this baby, I don't like him, I don't dislike him. So, but that's the delusion. But if you just see the baby, but if you're not attached to the picture properly, understanding the reality, then you won't get any sankhara.
So, my question was, I understood that. So, if you have Punyadi Sankara, you go to wholesome place, Apunyasad, you go to unwholesome. So, if you
Agreed.
write, I know Bahira didn't have any Sankara, but say for ordinary people like us, if we have an equanimous mind, where do we go? Do we go to
Well,
good?
if you had equanimity mind at that time, if you did not have any, you most probably it depends on, of course, the last
Yeah,
thought.
yeah,
So we
yeah,
call this, and then your pratisandhi
yeah,
vinyana. Yeah.
yeah.
So then you may not go to an unwholesome place,
Right.
because you did
Okay.
not have
Right. Okay.
I mean, in bad thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just remember now, once one god came to Buddha and said, Buddha, could you please advise to people, um, morning becoming day, day becoming night, and night becoming morning again. So then we becoming old, and then we going to die. So therefore, Buddha, please ask people to collect merits. And Buddha said, quote, whatever things you said in the two lines, you were correct. But third thing I have to correct, I'm not asking you to collect merits, but you need to get rid of 5 aggregates. That's what Buddha said. But if a Buddha wanted us to collect only merits, yeah, so that's what I always appreciate Bhante Panyavansa's sessions, because he's using the only way to purify our mind. But I'm not discriminating people who do merits. Now, this morning also I gave Udana, so therefore we do that. Yeah, so that of course we have to do, because we it's not guaranteed. You can't guarantee that you're going to attain Nibbana. So therefore something is better than nothing is did. So therefore let's do whatever we can. Either we may attain Nibbana, or at least we're not going to a bad realm, isn't it? Something like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
Right. I would like to Dale's question. Dale's question can be answered in a bit more detail. Dale, Aninjabi Sankhara includes the upekha that is found in the immaterial sphere,
Mm,
right? So when we refer to Anindjabi Sankhara, to those of you who are unaware of the Pali, Punyabhi Sankhara are the mental formations that are good. Apunyabhi Sankhara are those mental formations which are known as unwholesome. And Anindjabi Sankhara are those which are neither good nor unwholesome mental formations. So then what is then this ground? This is
mm.
referring to, because we know they are mostly either wholesome or unwholesome. So then what is this ground which is being referred to? It is referring to the immaterial plane. So
Oh,
you ask the question, where would a person who has an Anenjabi Sankhara arise? Immaterial plane, right? So that is the dhyana birth that we are referring to, not specifically to the Rupa Vachara,
mm.
and Rupa Vachara, this is referring to the Arupa Vachara, or the immaterial plane that we refer to. That is where they would arise there. Question answered? All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So anyone else who would like to ask any questions? Bante Yogavacha Rahula did come into the session for a short period of time and had to leave for something that had arisen all of a sudden, and Bante Sri Panya could not join us today. But we will try to, the monks, Dr. Kamal and myself will try to answer whatever questions that the community has to the best of our ability. One of the questions, Dr. Kamal, that we have received from one of our most beloved devotees, Pushpa, is how do we tackle drowsiness and stay alert, overcome drowsiness and stay alert during meditation? Dr. Kamal, what do you think?
Okay, now I can give one answer from Buddha's point of view. So when Mugalan, when the one of the chief disciples after Sarip was Mugalan.
Yeah.
So when Mugalan Thera was trying to meditate, So Mudrantera could not meditate at all. He becomes sleep. Yeah. So then Buddha noticed that. Buddha said, Mugalan, so stand up, yeah, and walk. Yeah. So there are six things he described. I just give in short.
Yeah.
And then said, okay, if it does not work, you just go out and be in sunlight or in moonlight. Otherwise, you wash your face. Or if everything fail, don't meditate, go and sleep and come back and do it later whenever you can. So that's the Buddha's answer from Tripitaka point of view. But these days, new scholars, meditators, yeah, I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. So what I'm just answering your question. So they suggesting different techniques. One is keep a matchbox on your head, or other is keep a couple of matchsticks between your thumb and the index finger, and you meditate. So whenever you start, when if you start falling, whenever you lose the grip, then you realize you're going to a dull stage. Yeah. So that's what the new meditators introducing. So, but I could not see anything through Tripitaka. Buddha has explained that when dullness comes, Buddha said, you aware dullness is arising, you aware what's the cause of dullness, you aware how dullness disappears, you aware when dullness appears in the future, you aware, and then how to deal with that. Because Buddha's meditation is focusing on mindfulness, awareness, not just doing something due to the dullness. So therefore, these are the two answers I can give from Tripitaka point of view and from new meditators' point of view. So my as a meditator, I normally don't do anything if I dull, because I know definitely I'm going to reach. I mean, meditation is not something you need to try to reach somewhere. However, if I feel sleepy, I normally don't meditate. These are the situations I don't meditate. If I am full tummy, I don't meditate. If I am hungry, I don't meditate. If I am sleepy, I don't meditate. So, but what I do before I go into bed, lying position, because the Buddha suggested four postures. In lying position, I do certain meditation, then I go to sleep straight away automatically. But if I want to do real meditation, I don't do it, because what's the point? Because meditation is not something you need to count and say, Kamal did meditation 100 times. But even once you did, if you got something from that, that is enough.
The I would say Dr. Kamal did mention about the Tripitaka, how the Tripitaka relates to Sloth and Torpor with practical aspects of how one could or would be able to look at sloth and torpor, or rather get rid of sloth and torpor, is, if it is because of physical conditions, as you've just eaten or something like that, something that the monks often do is usually followed by lunch or breakfast. We engage in Satman Bhavana, walking meditation. And this walking meditation we do quite fast, right? And also something it is a little bit difficult if you're not used to it. There are certain yoga postures that you can do that help in the digestive process, right? That help in the digestive process. Physical exercise through the day, right? Even if it is not with regards to food, remember that this is usually to do with the confidence that you have about yourself, the amount of effort that you are able to muster, right? How much of effort are you able to muster? This is the real sort of question and problem here, right? If it's not anything to do with the physicalities, right? Then to sort of support that, it is important that, of course, to have some sort of physical exercise routine in your day, right? And believe it or not, forest monks do have a physical exercise routine. I remember the time that we were at now in Aridhamma Swami Hanse's forest monastery. We all used to get up at 3:30 in the morning, come to the meditation hall at 4 o'clock in the morning, and do yoga up until 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, and then start our meditation practice at around 4:45, 5 o'clock. Right? This is very important. This is important to both lay and clergy. But in terms of the sluggishness that arises, sometimes the sluggishness, even for monks, sometimes we need to be motivated spiritually, right? To have a sense of drive spiritually. Where do you get this drive? That is from Dhamma. Dhamma Sakacha, Dhamma Desana, discussing of Dhamma, listening to the Dhamma, right? And reflecting upon the Dhamma. That, the Buddha says, gives you a sense of urgency. This urgency, like coal put into a furnace, fuels the fires that allow you to now put in the effort into meditation, right? Put in the effort required to meditation. Something other than now the spiritual aspects, now that is internal, the bodily aspects, that external. Another thing that is external that supports is having a good circle of Kalyana Mitras who support one another to practice and meditate. We can't do this alone. Right? I remember now living at Pauk Monastery and certain other monasteries which are now, for example, Pauk Monastery, because there are so much of bhikkhus and nuns and bhikkhus, there is no one to force you to go into the meditation hall, right? And sometimes you meditate, and then there are a couple of days you're just in your room, you don't feel like going to meditate, right? You don't feel it. It's a up and down, isn't it? It's up and down. So then when you look out of your kuti, when you look out of your bungalow, and then you hear the meditation gong being rung, and everyone is going to and you see everyone going to the meditation hall at the time that it is rung, it motivates you to practice. It motivates you to start going, right? It motivates you to start going. That motivation, where do we get that motivation from? Ask yourself, right? If we are practicing meditation, mindfulness, and vipassana just because you think it is good, that is not a good enough motivator, right? I know for me personally, the motivation has always been health, understanding, and being able to have a secure and stable mind. Health, understanding, and always being able to have a secure and stable mind, to be able to manage the trifles that are sort of thrown at us through the worldly sort of commotions that occur in our daily life, right? What are your motivations? So this could probably be a good sort of contemplation to do on your own to decide what is a path that we must follow. Now, before we go into other questions that have been put in, let's take a break. Let's take a break of 5 minutes. It's been 1 hour now. So let's take a break of 5 minutes. So we will see everyone in 5 minutes. We do have a recording that Bhante Joe has sent us. Bhante Joe has authored a book. He is resident at Baddeka Vihari in Sri Lanka. Bhante Joe authored a book on Bhante Jnana Deepa, and I am going to play it for all of you. He authored this book, which has been circulating around the West as well, and around the West, and it is regarding the practice, life, and last days of Venerable Jnanadepa, and sort of the ambience and light of Venerable Jnanadepa, and just being in the presence of such a person, right? Just being in the presence of such a person. So we'll come to that after a 5-minute break, right? See you all after 5 minutes. We'll start the session in another 1 minute time, please. Thank you. All right. So welcome back, everyone. So Bhante Joe, upon our request, I requested Bhante Joe to join us today, but unfortunately, because Bhante Joe resides in the jungle, he is unable to have sort of enough bandwidth to be able to join into a Zoom meeting of this sort. So Bhante Joe has been very kind to send us a recording of a brief recording to just show his support and to also to speak a few words on the life and practice of Venerable Jnanadeepa. It is important to, I met Bhante Jnanadeepa once. Venerable Sri Panya has met Jnanadeepa Thero once. Venerable Yogavacha Rahula has met Jnanadeepa Bhante a couple of times. Venerable Jnanadeepa Bhante, it is important to note, he wasn't a person who everyone sort of went to meet or could even meet. I remember I went with another devotee of mine from Colombo, and Venerable Jnanadeepa refused to meet the devotee, but only agreed to meet me as a monk. And Venerable Jnanadeepa came out as a person, or he to those who did not know Venerable Jnanadeepa well, he came out as a person who he looked as a person who had a bit of, who was a bit aggressive. But really what Venerable Jnanadeepa's practice was all about was getting rid of those prapanchas, those sort of dhammas which proliferates a mind to sort of, and the vanchaka dhammas, the masquerading factors, which we will speak about in a bit. But first, let's listen to what Bhante Joe has kindly sent us.
So warm greetings, everybody. My name is Bhante Joe, and was requested to say a few words about Jnanadeepa Bhante. So I had the great honor and great opportunity to compose a book about Jnanadeepa Bhante, something about his life and his teachings here at the monastery. So I came to meet him. It had been my dream to meet him for a long time. I'd heard about him and his lifestyle, wandering in the forest and building kutis in the forest. And it seemed to me really similar to the way they lived in the time of the Buddha. And so through a series of fortunate events this year, had the chance to meet him. And then he came not long after to stay at the monastery where I'm currently living, which is called Badeka Vihari. During his time here, he gave a lot of Dhamma discussions, and he would talk both about his teachings, talk both about the suttas, answer questions about the Dhamma, but sometimes he would also talk about his life. And so from that, with quite a lot of help from another monk named Gutta Sila Bhante, was able to fill in some of the details of his life for a book. And so he was a unique character in modern Sri Lankan forest tradition, in that he basically spearheaded a movement towards solitary forest living. When he first started out as a young monk, he was living in solitude, and there was maybe one other monk who'd lived in solitude, and more than one other, but at the kuti he'd stayed in, there was one or two other monks who were well known for living in solitude. But he, throughout his life, kept going to different forests, going to different places, and having kutis built. And he created a culture where monks in Sri Lanka basically began to take up this lifestyle of living alone in the forest, going to the village for Pindapat, and then returning again to their kutis. Most of this culture was spread from a place called Lagala. Nyanadeepa Bhante, soon after his ordination, went to live in solitude at the Bundala Kuti, which had previously been inhabited by Venerable Jnanavira, who was another well-known Western monk, and another monk named Venerable Jnanasumana. And he stayed there for about 7 years. But after that, he went and stayed in the Singharaja forest for a couple of years. And also he stayed in a place called Bulat Singhala. But eventually he found his way to this large forest area called Lagala. And it was here that he found a forest area that was isolated in and of itself. It was bordered by the Waskamua National Park, as well as some rivers and mountain ranges, which made the region itself, this forest region itself, relatively remote and inaccessible. And here he would go deep into the forest, and he would look for places to build solitary kutis, and he would live in these kutis for about a year, and then he would move on and find another place. And eventually, through different avenues, other monks came to join him, and they started to meet. But it was very kind of sporadic, not sporadic, but very not frequent. It was just 3 times a year that they would meet and discuss the Dhamma. Then they would return to living in solitude. And through the establishment of this community, this culture of solitary living became a kind of feature, at least part through the establishment. This was a big contribution, at least from what I was able to gather, that this community at Lagala built up a culture which spread from Lagala to other places in Sri Lanka, and basically made solitary forest living one of the features of the Sri Lankan forest tradition. And so for this reason, he was a kind of an influential figure in the Sri Lankan forest tradition, somebody who helped to give it another way of practice, an additional way of practicing the Buddhist teachings in the forest. And as far as his teachings themselves go, he was very well versed in Pali. He was understood by many, I think, to be one of the foremost living Pali experts. He'd actually memorized, I think, most of the gathas in the Pali canon at one point, and he was expert in the language. And he didn't have a teacher per se, but used the suttas in their original Pali language as his teacher. And because of this, his teachings had a kind of a unique flavor, because he was a meditation practitioner, but he was also an expert scholar. And so his teachings on some of the concepts in Buddhism and Buddhist thought and Buddhist theory, they came from the canon, and he used the traditional words, traditional frameworks found in the canon, but he sometimes would add a new twist, add a kind of a special way of interpreting them that came from his own practical experience. One of the examples of this is the teaching on Chittanupassana. So he was in the Satipatthana Sutta and other suttas. Chittanupassana is very briefly mentioned, but he developed his own way of doing it, just basically based on the suttas, but also working it out, that he found very effective for eliminating the defilements. And so it could be very interesting, very riveting to hear him talk about his insights, because many monks, of course, have read parts of the Pali Canon, but he was coming from a position in his teaching that was somewhat unique, from what I'd heard, at least before, in that he was an expert scholar, but also he had this practical experience. And so he had a way of explaining the Pali terms, a way of explaining the nuances of the suttas that could be very, very engaging. very interesting to hear, because he used those frameworks in his own practice and got good results. So he passed away this September, and despite his solitary lifestyle, he was possibly one of the most solitary monks in Sri Lanka. Despite that, he was highly revered, and at his funeral there was maybe 600 or 700 lay people and 100 or 200 monks, and he left behind a legacy. It's kind of a legacy of practicing in solitude in the forest, a legacy of using the Buddhist teachings in the Pali Canon as a guide. And maybe most importantly, he left behind this legacy of a lifestyle that was aimed at the noble attainments and that focused on renunciation, living alone with the suttas as a guide for the sake of Nibbana. And for all these reasons, he became something of a legend in Sri Lanka and became a kind of figure who'd helped establish something new and whose example of his life inspired monks and lay people in his generation, and hopefully will come to inspire monks and lay people in generations afterwards. So those are a few words on Gnanadeepa Bhante. So hope that everybody has a great day, and sending all best wishes from Sri Lanka. And bye for now.
Wonderful. I mean, he does sound very sweet as well, as he is a real sweet monk, as all of us are, or at least most of us. So I have put the book. I have put Bhante Joe's book in the chat section if anyone wants to download it and give it a read. I think from a meditator's perspective, Bhante Joe's book is really good because it has the sort of the quotes and sort of the question and answer sessions which has occurred between Venerable Gnanadeepa and the monks relating to their meditation queries, right? So which is a really nice book in that way to read. Another book that I would suggest that you try to get your hands on is the exchange of letters, which was compiled into a book between Venerable Jnana Rama Mahatera and his disciple, right? I forget the title of the book, but if you do Google Venerable Jnana Rama on Google, you will come out with the book. It is available to be bought on Amazon, I presume. It is a really nice book for any meditator who is, because this lady who communicates in writing with Venerable Jnana Rama is a woman who is living at home with her helpers, with the family, and yet communicating in letters with Venerable Jnana Rama to receive the Kammatthana, the meditating instructions, which she then sort of goes through, and it comes to yes, it is freedom. Thank you, Miri, for that is the title of the book. It is freedom, right? So that is also a book that can help all of you practitioners. And even I read the book, I found it very inspiring myself, right? So if you do get your hands on the book, these books are very interesting to read and also shed a sort of a profound light on the practice in its most practical raw forms that is applicable to a householder, that is applicable to a person who has many other things going on other than just the practice in one's life. So we do have some other questions, Dr. Kamal. We have a question asked by Anoma. When you practice Kayanupassana meditation, sometimes I tend to think scientifically, right? How can I get out of this thought? A lot of vitakka, right? Dr. Kamal, what do you think?
Yeah. Okay, Mrs. Vattaladini, yes, I seen your message. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, just say, now, we have three types of panya. Yeah. So number one, we got Sutameya Jnana or Sutameya Panya. And then we got, now Sutameya Panya means when you heard or when you read. Yeah, so you get knowledge, and then you get wisdom. And chinta me panya means you thinking, like your question. So you're thinking about something. So that's the panya you get, you wisdom through your thoughts. You start to think, vitakka vichara, yeah. And then you get bhavana me panya. So that is the right one. Let me explain, give you example. Just say you go into a restaurant, yeah, you go into a restaurant and you waiting because other people's been served. So you are waiting at the dining table. So then the waiter brings you a menu. So you read the menu, then you have idea which type of food you have. Then maybe you start, salivation in your mouth because you like this particular food. So that is the that is the panya, wisdom you gain through Suttamaya. So it means either you heard or you read. Okay, now just say, but you came to the restaurant to eat. Then after that, you can see some people being already served, a family with children, so they are enjoying. So then again, it starts salivation, and then it's nice food, people are enjoying. So that we call as chintame panya. So like a question, you start thinking about your body or whatever. Maybe now, example, I did a lot of post-mortem. Sometimes when I was begin in meditation, I started to think about people's, body parts, yeah. And but I had to convert into 32 body part like Buddha's teaching. And then the third wisdom is the right wisdom you need to use in meditation, which we call bhavaname panya. It means just say you check the menu, you are happy, you saw people eating, you happy, then waiter brought the food, now you need to eat food. So when you eating food, you're not thinking about the menu, you're not thinking about how other people eating, you need to use your bhavaname panya, and you eating like you separately you enjoy food, maybe fish curry, chicken curry, vegetable curry, or anything, yeah, or papadang or whatever. So you enjoying, you eating, you enjoying, you thinking about the food what you are eating right now. But you should forget what you heard and what you saw. So it means while you meditating, example, if you think about 32 parts of your body, then you need to know, you need to see within your meditation. I mean, you should come, Mr. Swatalageda, I'm sure you've been meditating long time. So I think you have reached that level. So when you come to a certain level, then you go into a meditation panya. So bhavana me panya, and then you started to think, okay, this body is built up of from top to the bottom, 32 parts, just say bones here. So these bones are decaying. So first of all, you use this your Suttamaya Jnana and Chintamaya Jnana. But when you start to do meditation, Vidarsana meditation, because that's why we have to first make the anchor and to get the breath, watching breath, then step by step you open your heart and mind, then you should be able to forget all this what you heard and see what's happening within you. Example, let's say a very easy example. Now, just say if you are a medic or a nurse, you may think when you do watching breath, you may start to think, okay, I got nose, pharynx, larynx, and then I got windpipe, I got lungs. So this is the way AI is going through. AI is touching this respiratory tract. Now lungs are expanding. That is the scientific way. So what we need to see, forget about the science and see how your air is touching the nostrils and how they entering to the body. So it means you just see the expansion and relaxation. I mean, of your lungs, or otherwise falling, and you just see in your rising and falling effect of your tummy, or otherwise how air is going through your nostrils. So that's why Buddha said you need to use Sating Upattapetva. So if you see any type of meditation in Sating Upattapetva, like if you see in Digha Nikaya, volume 2, Sutta number 9. So for each and every Satipatthana meditation, you need to start with, one is the posture and Sating Upattapetva, Parimukang. It means you keep your attention at the Parimukha. So then only you can step by step forget about all these your thoughts, all what you heard, and you then start to have your vidarshana jnana or bhavanamya jnana. Because otherwise it's very difficult when you start to think about. So step by step you need to go to this process. So forget what you heard, forget what you saw, and try to see within your body how this air is rising and falling. Air is changing, in-breath change to out-breath change to in-breath. Sometimes breath is faster, sometimes slow, sometimes shallow, sometimes deep. Please try to see within you, but forget about the science and what you heard. I don't know whether I answered your question.
Yes, and yes, Anuma.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kamal. The explanation is very clear. And Bhante, I just want to make another point. Now, if you think of the heart, I always think the blood flow, that is correct. Like if you concentrate on the heart, the flow of blood, it's coming and going, like that. This is the problem that I have when I say scientifically. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I always advise Mrs. Vattaldini, I normally follow only Digha Nikaya and then Maharahulova Sutta, because I normally use only as reference only Tripitaka. So
Okay,
I read, of course, all the other books, but I normally follow only Digha Nikaya and Maharahulova. And there are then Majjhima Nikaya, Sangyukta Nikaya, because now, example, in Digha Nikaya, it does not explain much about Sating, Parimukang Sating Upattapetva. Yeah, so therefore we need to find another reference and see what exactly this means. Because if you don't use that one, which we call Sati Nimitta, if you lost the Sati Nimitta, you're not going to the right level of meditation in your Vipassana.
Okay,
therefore, what I normally do is I just refer to these books written in Pali, and if I don't understand, I ask someone what's the meaning, because I don't know much Pali. But thing is, when it comes to English, some of the things misinterpreted. Not only English, other languages, because it's coming from,
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Yeah. Something that I would like to add with regards to, because this sort of mind, even if it is something which is biological based, scientific, or even the fact that we start thinking about many other things, different other things regarding our home or whatever it is, all this which we would in Pali classify as vitakka. Right? For a mind which is vitakka, now remember that vitakka, or this initial application as a mental factor, is something which is very apparent in people who are very intellectual, right? So intellectuals have a lot of vitakka that will arise, right? And sometimes if you have identified yourself as such kind of a person, going against the grain of your conditioning from day one is going to be a very arduous journey, because from day one you're going against your conditioning. What do we do? Right? In that case, a practice that I have seen, although I have not used it personally a lot, I have seen many of my devotees and a lot of monks, and also taught by Lady Sayadaw, who is sort of seen as a saint in Burma, is the use of the rosary, the Navaguna Vala. Right? The usage of the Navaguna Vala, especially to those who, for example, even if you are not a person who would fit into that intellectual scheme, but yet have so much going on in their lives. For example, I've had a devotee who was going through acute illness, to do with a lot of pain in the body, cancer, them coming into this practice and finding a lot of grace and sort of profound peace through this practice, where you get used to, you give yourself a amount of repetitions, right? You give yourself an amount of repetitions and you start keeping to this repetition. What this does, it adverts the mind, it trains the mind to advert to one object over many. Samadhi, that is the definition of samadhi. When you do this in the beginning, it would be difficult, right? In the beginning, it will be difficult. That is guaranteed. It will be. But as you go, just 1 week, just keep on going 1 week. From the start of the second week, it will get so much more easier and you will be so much more comfortable. The mind will just settle onto that chanting, whether it is the chanting of the qualities of the Buddha, like a mantra, which is the itibiso, Bhagavarahan Samma Sambuddho Vijjachana Sampanno, if you choose that, or any other gatha or Pali stanza that you would use. Repeating this will also allow for the mind to get used to this fact of being within one object. And Pushpa, even in your question where you asked about restlessness, sloth and torpor, this also accelerates and helps in terms of getting rid of sloth and torpor, right? But remember, what you have to have an aim. Okay, is it 100 repetitions? Is it 1,000 repetitions? Is it 5,000 repetitions? I know a lady who I have a lot of respect for. She was going through acute illness. She might be here today. But she was going through acute painful illness, and she resorted to using the rosary, and she was chanting, as I remember, it was 5,000 or 10,000 times, either 5,000 or 10,000 times the Itibiso. And at first it took her a couple of hours, and then she was able to do it within an hour. So every 2 weeks or so, she would make a trip to Anuradhapura and sort of chant this, sort of, do this chant. And this helped her a lot with her illness, with her meditation practice. And she came back to me and she told me, this was very useful. Right? So this could be a practice that could help people who have these minds, who have so much going on in their lives and find it really difficult to come into a state of awareness and awareness. So, Dil, you had a question, another question, if you would like to ask. Yes, Dil.
Yes, I have a couple of them. I'll first answer the quick, short one, which I wanted to ask you. It's about what you were referring to about. You were talking about the noting mind and the knowing mind. Now, I think it was Dr. Kamal who, in his talk last week, I may have got this wrong, but I heard him say the Pajanati was knowing as it is experience, not before or after, but to know insightfully what you see in the present moment. So if that is so, when you're referring to Pajanati, are you referring only to the knowing mind and not the noting mind? Is Pajanati because it's knowing as it is experience, not before or after, knowing insightfully. So does that Pajanati, that knowing, is it referring to the knowing in Chittanupassana of the noting, knowing mind, and not the noting, or the whole thing together loosely?
Well, I leave that for Bhante to answer that knowing and noting mind. So which I mentioned was in Pajanati. I didn't talk specifically noting mind and knowing mind. Because I need really more time just to describe these two things, because now knowing mind means, now when you know someone, there is no knower. Yeah, so it means you know, but there shouldn't be a knower behind that. So, but if there is a knower, I think Bhante would explain that as he did Chittanupassana, he may explain in details. So what I mean by Pajanati, now Buddha always mentioned in these suttas, now discourses, Pajanati means you just see, not intellectually, you just see within you, whether it is Kayanupassana, Vedanupassana, Chittanupassana, Dhammanupassana. So you know that within you. So it means
insightfully you see it. That's the real meaning. I mean, janati means you know, but pajanati, you insightfully you see it. Like Mrs. Vattaladeniya's question. So, example, now I can say, okay, the respiratory tract, I can remember what it consists of. But when you do meditation, you need to experience that. You need to reflect on that. That's the main Buddha mean by pajanati. I mean, that's what I said, Miss Dill. It's very, very difficult to explain in English and some other languages exactly the meaning, but only what we can get from the contents. Yeah, is you need to reflect on you. You need to see within you. Because otherwise, once you finish meditation, you just get up from the cushion like you did nothing, like you just watch a movie, just you tranquilize your mind. But whenever you come to the next, that's why the Harvard University research shows if you do this meditation, mindfulness, stress reduction meditation, which I practice, people being referred in HS or whatever, with people. So if you practice 28 days in a row, at least 15 minutes a day, you will definitely get the results, because that's what the research shows, because you get your cortisol level down and you get more cosmic energy when you are in the present moment. So therefore, but when you do that regularly, like Bhante said to Ms. Swataladini, do it first week, second week, third week. So like that you build up. Buddha said, Bhavita Bahulikata. You need to use it every day. Otherwise, we take this Satipatthana. I mean, there are three things in Satipatthana. One is Satipatthana, then Satipatthana Bhavana, then Satipatthana pathway. So we were talking about this now Satipatthana, but when it's come to Satipatthana Bhavana, you go deep into the Bhavana and then you go to the path. So therefore, Chintamaya Jnana and Sutamaya Jnana will give us just a knowledge, intellectual knowledge. If you want, I can go and give a big lecture about Satipatthana, but I don't know how to practice, like Tucca Potila. So why Buddha said to Potila? Potila knew A to Z, the Tripitaka, but he didn't know how to practice it. So therefore, we need to be not intellectual. Yeah, we should be practicing it and see it within us. So if then we need to do a self-assessment. Whenever I see the boy's picture next time, am I better? When I see the person with a knife, am I better? So therefore, like I always said, number of practices do not make any sense. But how you improve your quality of life, how you can put meditation to day-to-day practice is the matter, Mr. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
the two words I have put it on the chat, janati and pajanati. Janati, there are different practitioners and scholars have different ideas about the variation of this word. Janati would mean that a person would know before or after some phenomena takes place. That is one. And in parallel to that definition, pajanati is knowing as it happens. Some also say, which this is kind of like a throw in the air really, that janati is knowledge, pajanati is insight, right? That in terms of a practice makes a little bit more sense, because pajanati, now Dil, you ask question. So Dil, when you say, if we are relating this to the awareness mind and the noting mind, right? Pajanati would very much be the awareness mind,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you, ma'am.
But remember,
Yeah.
we have, or rather, Shwe U Min Sayadaw, who my talk was based on, whose Dhamma and teachings my talk was based on, had used this concept of the awareness mind and the noting mind to bring a bit of detail and clarity on the path of practice with regards to where we must observe and how we should observe it. right? So other teachers might say the same thing using different words or different ways and techniques, right? So it wouldn't be fair to sort of, because Dr. Kamal did a different presentation in a different way, it wouldn't be fair to sort of apply that to Dr. Kamal's technique or Dr. Kamal's teaching, but know that, you know, in one way or another, this is the path where we came when we were doing the Brahmajala Sutta, and now we are doing, what is the sutta that we are doing now? The Madhupindika Sutta. In both of these suttas, we have now come to this word of, what is the word? Disentanglement or unentangled awareness.
Yes.
That is what the awareness mind and noting mind represents. Unentangled awareness. Can you be aware of a phenomena where you are aware of something, but you are not aware of it in a way that you equate it to being a part of you, your belief systems, or what you think? You are observing it as a phenomena of the world, not equating into the conceit concept. That is a path that relates to all terms of the Satipatthana, in every part of its practice, right? So moving on, we also have a practice. What Satipatthana? How do you determine which Satipatthana to practice, right? Now, if I would start, Dr. Kamal, you can add your thoughts on this afterwards. If I would start on this, I would say, with experience of living in different monasteries that teach different techniques of practice, right? First of all, monasteries go from whether it is samatha to vipassana, whether it is shuddha vipassana. Usually it is in this method that the meditation centers are divided into. Either they are samatha jnanika vipassana, meaning they will do the focus oriented practices and they will go into insight practices through the focus oriented practices. For example, like Achan Brahm's techniques, right? Then we have techniques such as Suddha Vipassana, like the Mahasi techniques, and most of you might know Dhammajiva Bhante's technique, you know, which is following the Mahasi technique. So the Mahasi techniques are Shuddha Vipassika. So those are Shuddha Vipassana techniques. So in terms of that being so, what happens is, what happens is we would first be given, or what we would be asked to meditate on first is either Anapana. Actually, in all cases, it is Anapanasati, right? We would be asked to meditate. If we take Goenka's technique, if we take Mahasi technique, if we would take Pauk technique, if we would take Sunlun Searo's technique, if we would take Xiaomin technique, all of these techniques would take us or start from the Anapanasati, right? I think Dr. Kamal said something very similar as well. You know, Anapanasati is a very beautiful, powerful technique, right? So there are other techniques which involve, if the teacher knows the students much more intimately, then there are other techniques that can be brought in if the student has been recognized. Meaning, if the fetters that the student has, if the focus points of the student, if these things have been recognized, then something that can be done is that the student then can be told by the teacher, okay, rather than Anapana, let's start from here. But usually it is Anapana. So using Anapana to then direct your practice to whatever that arises after you have reached a certain state in Anapana is a promising way to start off your practice. Dr. Kamal, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, difficult to ask this question because, you know, but I always stick to the only Tripitaka. So, I mean, so what I can say now, what Buddha said. Buddha said, Ekayano ayam bhikkave maggo sattanang visuddhya. Can you see the PowerPoint, yeah?
Yes.
Yes. Soka pariddavanam samatikkamaya, blah, blah, blah. finally say, if you want to do this, get these 7 things: purification from all kind of defilement, sorrow and worry, lamentation, cessation of all kinds of physical suffering, mental suffering, enlightenment, and nibbana. So there are 7. So then Buddha saying what you have to do. So Buddha said, Khatame chattaro, what to be done. Therefore, we can't go against, go against this. So what Buddha said, Khatame chattaro. So atapi, that means kayanupassana, vedananupassana, chittanupassana, dhammanupassana. So all these 4 we need to practice if we want to have those 7. But moreover, just I need to get from my own session. Now we said who we are. So we are Pancha Upadana Skandha. Yeah. So we are Pancha Upadana Skandha, 5 aggregates. So then if we want to get rid of us, I want to get rid of me, I can easily commit suicide. But still 5 aggregates will be there. So then committing suicide is not a solution. So because still 5 aggregates going to continue my life cycle, birth and death. So therefore, if I want to get rid of me means I, me and mine, ego. So then I have to meditate on all these 4. So it means form or matter is for kayanupassana. And then feeling or sensation for vedananupassana. Perception, mental formation for dhammanupassana. And consciousness is for chittanupassana. So then please let us think. So if we want to get rid of us, I mean the feeling of me, feeling of I, feeling of mine, how come we practice only one of them? Then Buddha could say, let us practice one of them. Buddha never said that. Example, now, but there, you can do, only thing is if you want to just tranquil your mind, like non-Buddhist, most of non-Buddhists like to do. So they like to do samatha meditation just to tranquil their mind. But some of them are not interested in vipassana. Then of course you can do samatha meditation only. But the other thing is, like Bante correctly said, the beautiful session you got in Anapanasati Sutta, and as I mentioned before, if Siddhartha Gautama Bodhisattva could be enlightened through Anapanasati, Anapanasati meditation has all 4. So it has been divided into 16 steps. For the first 4 is Kayanupassana. For the second 4, Vedananupassana, then Chittanupassana, and Dhammanupassana. So therefore, at least we need to practice Anapanasati meditation. If we can't practice all 4, Kayanupassana, Vedananupassana, I mean, in Kayanupassana, other than breath, you can watch 4 great elements, you can watch full attention, you can full Navasivatika and repulsiveness of the body. But at least we need to practice Anapanasati meditation correctly. That's what I think. Because I just follow what Satipatthana Sutta says and Anapanasati Sutta says.
All right. Thank you very much for the person who asked that question. I would like to bring to light a quotation quoted by Venerable Analayo, which I think is important to go through because we are drawing close to the end of the session. Venerable Analayo, I'm going to quote it right from the book itself. If you do not know who Venerable Analayo is, Venerable Analayo, for his PhD thesis at the University of Peradeniya, compiled a very, very, very beautiful treatise on the Satipatthana. Now, this book, although it was his PhD thesis, has become a classic in terms of the study, which aids in the study of the Satipatthana. So it is basically, the title of the book is Satipatthana. So if you can get your hand on that book is a gold mine for anyone who wants to really go deeper into the Satipatthana. I would really recommend that you go through the book just once, don't try to understand much, but then the second time focus on the book, but you will have to go through the book a couple of times. Reading it once is not enough. So from the book of Satipatthana, I'm quoting this, right? All right, Bikwanalyo. The term vipassana means insight. I think the important point to keep in mind is that this is not a technique. It is actually a quality, right? Which is actually a quality that is quite different from the understanding that many nowadays have. When we say vipassana, we often feel that this is a particular technique, a particular form of meditation that if you have that, you have to do. But actually, vipassana is a quality. It is the quality of insight, right? It is the quality of insight, very much like Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu, earth, fire, wind, water, the elements, which are qualities present as intrinsic qualities present in each and everything around us in different levels, of course, but very much present in each and everything around us. When I see, right, what is the relationship between vipassana and the three characteristics, Bhikkhu, when I see with insight that leads to an increasing appreciation of the true nature of reality, yatha bhuta, seeing and knowing things as they really are, the more I see and know things as they really are, the more I realize that they are indeed impermanent, unable to give lasting satisfaction, and that there is no permanent self, that everything is conditioned, and that the Four Noble Truths are indeed a meaningful framework to progress to liberation. I think in that first part, which I read out, this Bhikkhu Analeo, most importantly, is quoting the necessary attitude of mind towards the practice when a practitioner endeavors upon that which we refer to as a vipassana practice. As long as we hold the vipassana practice, what is the vipassana practice? We know the three characteristics. The three characteristics: impermanent, suffering, and non-self. As long as we hold this contemplation of impermanent, suffering, and non-self as a technique, it in our mind, at the back of our mind, appears to us, to our subconscious, as something which is, of course, mentioned in Buddhism, but also something that there could be something else which we regard in a truer form, So I wonder whether that is understood. Where when we use it as a technique, we would then assume that, okay, there is a Buddhist technique called vipassana, and then there is this life that we live. But Bhikkhu Analeo is saying is vipassana, impermanent suffering, non-self, is not a practice or a technique, but it's really the reality of things. As a reality of things, as the qualities inherent in each and every phenomena in front of us, behind us, within us, over us, under us, in the world all around. So to mentally really caress the idea, not the idea, that's wrong again, to allow yourself to know things as they really are. That mentality where you don't, it's like this: when we talk about the practice, and we have engaged, all of us have engaged in a lot of Dhamma desanas, Dhamma discussions, all of that. And we sometimes, or in most instances, we understand that people want to practice meditation, Buddhism, to excel their minds, all of these things towards Nibbana or other reasons, whatever it is. But we have the worldly life that we all live, and then we have a life that the Buddha has taught us about. But now these two lives to us seem very different or much apart. There is a part of our mind which believes in this and believes that this is true, and then there's a part of our mind that believes that this is true, right? So in a state of confusion, we have this trouble of really embracing what the true Dhamma or what true practice we should engage ourselves in as we try to progress upon this path. Right? That is what Bhikkhu Analayo is mentioning by the fact of saying this is not just a technique. This is indeed the reality of existence that we are in. So Vipassana can be through, if we have followed through all the series that we had done and also a prior practice with Kayanupassana, Chittanupassana, Vedananupassana, Chittanupassana and Dhammanupassana, we have really gone through Nama and Rupa. Right? The factors, the mental factors, the consciousnesses, the hindrances, the cause and effect, all of these things are those elements that are covered through the Satipatthana practice. The Satipatthana, awareness through Satipatthana, is really awareness over the entire universe and all the elements within the universe. Right? So saying that, I would like to, although not all the speakers are present here today, I would like to thank, of course, Dr. Kamal, who is with us, and he has been very, very supportive of all our requests. So thank you very much, Dr. Kamal. And we would also like to thank Venerable Rahula, Yogavacha Rahula. We do have Venerable Rahula coming in for a couple of sessions in the future. So do subscribe to the Dhamma Center to be made aware of all these programs that are going to be coming up. We do have some single programs also coming on the Paticcasamuppada, a course on the Paticcasamuppada, which will be conducted by a Venerable from Sri Lanka. We have a wide variety of programs, so make sure that you do subscribe, and even to catch Venerable Rahula again through the Dhamma Center. So also, although Venerable Sri Panya is also not here, I would like to thank him as well. And of course, thank you to everyone who has made the time and come out to support us. And also, I am so happy and glad with all the feedback that we have received through all the sessions that we have been conducting for the past so many weeks, the 5 weeks. All the feedback and the support that we have received from all of our devotees. So thank you, everyone. And let us take the time, let us also take the time to observe, to sort of bring to our mind, because this is a session that we sort of organize in memory of Venerable Jnanadepa, to always know in our minds that there are beings in this world, Venerable Jnanadepa being a foreigner to Buddhism, right, was able to embrace Buddhism to such an extent, and actually the practice to such an extent, that he moved to an entirely different country. He put away his passport, and he started just practicing. There is no forest path. There is no forest path that Venerable Jnanadepa does not know. A friend of mine who was a monk who did not reside, but was with Venerable Jnanadepa for a couple of days in the forest, said, it is amazing how Venerable Jnanadepa, in the thick jungle, Venerable Jnanadepa would know each and every route, where the river is, where the lake is, which way to go, how to avoid the animals, right? And at one point, the Venerable said that there was this elephant, and he, of course, he was not used to that. So he sort of stopped in his tracks. Venerable Jnanadepa just went, and this was a wild elephant, it seems. And Venerable Jnanadepa just touched him on his trunk, and sort of, like how the Sri Lankans say, hello, Machang. sort of like, slapped the elephant on his trunk and just passed the elephant and went by. And, Venerable Jnanadeepa was not just a monk living in the forest, he was a part of the forest. He was very much a part of the forest. And even though Venerable Jnanadeepa in the forest tradition is really a mystical character, because you have to really plan ahead if you want to meet him. And we would hear stories, and we are most inspired by his practice. So he is a person that everyone looked up to. And although many other monks haven't met him, he was a figure that really motivated the monks to really keep on going. Yes, Dr. Kamal, you said you have
I got a couple of queries whether my PowerPoint could be shared among some attendees. So therefore, I rather maybe if you could request through Bhante, then I can send the PowerPoint to the Dhamma Center email.
Yeah.
Then anybody
We
who
can send it
likes
out as a final sort of thanking email with the PowerPoint presentation and the links to all the books that were mentioned.
Yeah.
So don't worry, everyone. If you have subscribed to the Dhamma Center, you will get the links. Thank you, Dr. Kamal.
All right.
Dr. Kamal, would you like to say something before we close this?
No.
All right.
I mean, I really appreciate you organizing this. Yeah.
Yes.
Especially Satipatthana. Yeah, that's the only way. That's why.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And so thank you very much, everyone. And see you all at our next session. Take care and have a lovely rest of the day. Goodbye.
It was an amazing program, Bhante.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.